Lads, welcome to the meta of Army XP. And the reason I'm making this video is there's been a few changes in the latest patches to how Army XP works. You used to gain a significant amount of Army XP by hiring high command and as well as hiring the chief of the army, navy, or air force, depending on what XP you actually needed. But now they've slimlined that system, and I think they've made it significantly more OP than it used to be. And we're just going to talk about that now. I would say one of the most important aspects of 44 is to gain early XP. Gives you two things. One, you can modify your division template, so therefore you can make a division template that's more meta. In this case, adding more soft attack to a division, therefore giving artillery, therefore giving your infantry a little bit more soft attack. Or for instance, making a tank division. And the average tank division, if you want to go for a 40 width, is going to be an average of 40 or 50 XP to make a really desirable template. If not more, if you want to fill out all the support brigades as well. So probably one of the earliest things you want to invest in, particularly as a democratic nation, which usually a democratic nation is more difficult to get hold of XP with, is to go for your military staff. And as the UK, you've actually got a really juicy option. But I don't think I could recommend going for the genius over the expert, because you have to pay double the amount of political power to only gain an extra 0.1 extra XP. So you wouldn't believe how much XP that you gain just going for the army expert. In this case, you gain 0.3 daily, which adds up massively. So let's think about that for a second. Let's bring up a little bit of calculator. So 0.3 over a year, 365. That gives you 100 army XP. So you've made your perfect infantry division, and you've also made your perfect tank division, or you've unlocked the next doctrine. But there's more to it than that. There's more ways of gaining XP. So that just gets you from 936 to 937 if you hire this guy as soon as possible. So there you go. You're at the start of the game here. Once again, I wouldn't recommend the genius. I don't think the 0.1 is worth it for the 100 political power, but overall defense or offense is going to be useful. And there you go. You've got ticking army XP. And this is a lot easier of getting XP than you used to have in the old system, because the only old way you could do it in the old system was by training divisions continuously. If we move our guys here and start exercising them, you do gain a trickling amount of XP for that. Let's have a look. So you're getting 0.3 daily from that advisor we just hired. And if you look closely here, we're getting 0.04 daily from training our entire army. It's just not worth it. And you're losing so much equipment from that. So I would really never recommend you do that. It's a bit of a weird system, this, because I thought the way XP worked is you are learning from battles, learning the lessons from battles, and therefore developing your army internally to make something that's mid-maxy and meta. Does that kind of seem kind of strange? Like, for instance, let's say France's and the UK's doctrines were out of whack and they're out of date, but until they start losing battles, they start to make divisions that are more meta and up to date and actually are more effective. Where Germany, they've got access to lots of XP because they get it from like the Spanish Civil War. That's kind of like from a historical context, how the XP is meant to work as an in-game system. But with the new advisors now, the chief of the army, you can gain just a ridiculous amount of XP. So potentially from 936 to 939, if you hire the advisor pretty much instantly, you can gain up to 300 XP over that time period. 300 XP for a democratic nation is just big. You'd even argue, actually, going for the chief of army is probably more worthwhile now than actually mobilizing your economy. And that's pretty big to say that, because mobilizing your economy is like, at the moment, the current meta to get your consumer goods as low as possible to give your economy a nice boost, a nice kick. But don't forget about as well, you can also get that for the chief of the navy too. Same thing again, 0.3 daily. Remember, the specialist is cheaper. It's surprisingly the specialist requires more command power. I wonder what the mindset behind that is. It looks like the experts only require 10 command power. So the geniuses require 10 command power. Experts require 20 and the specialists require 30. I wonder if it's something like a micromanagement of your high command. It's the idea that because they're not as an experienced and professional at what they do, maybe they eat up more of your command power experience. That's the only way I can think about it, because you'd think it would work in the opposite way, wouldn't it? It would eat more command power to have someone who's more experienced. And under the old patches, you would gain XP for the high command as well, which is the last 3 slots. You don't gain them anymore. You just gain the bonuses. So my advice is there's no point assigning these guys until you're actually imminent and you're about to go to war. So don't bother with them for the time being. One thing to note as well that I think is really important is there are also guys who are reformers as well. So this guy is an air reformer. He will gain you 0.3 air XP per day. You can see 0.3. But as an added bonus, he increases the amount of gain of air XP by 10%. So he's not actually gaining you 0.3. He's actually gaining you 0.33 per day. Can you see that daily gain, 0.33? And that will also take into account of any kind of aircraft combat. Best example is if you would gain 10 10 air XP from using your planes in Poland, let's say, British fighters, you would gain 11 if you've got this advisor, because it gives you an extra 10% on top of that as well. So the first question is, what should you invest your experience into? In most cases, you're probably going to say, oh, you need to make your perfect division template. I'm going to say no on that. There are a few advisors you could go for under your officer corps that can give you more XP. So for instance, if I was a democratic nation, let's say France or the UK, and I was going to go historical, the first thing I'm going to want to do is under the spirit of the army, there's the relief of command, which gives you a massive bonus to army XP of 25%. So not only is it 25% more XP that you're gaining from your advisor as a flat amount, but you're also, to top that off as well, gain more XP from training your army as well as participating in battles. Of course, participating in battles is not really a big thing at the very start of the game until, well, Danzig or war, because you're not going to be fighting in combat. But there you go, boom. And now we are gaining a total amount daily of 0.44 XP. It's just absolutely massive amount of experience. So potentially then, if we whip out our calculator, 0.44 over 365 days, we gain 160 XP, and then over 2 years, 321 XP. And over, let's say, I guess over 3 years, you'd max out at 500 XP, wouldn't you? Remember, you can't get more than 500 XP banked, so you have to spend it at some point. Alternatively, if you're playing as a fascist nation or a communist nation, you can go for the professional officer corps. It doesn't give you the luxurious 25% XP gain, but it gives you 5%, and it does make doctrines 5% cheaper as well, so it's got 2 extra benefits as well. At that point, if you've maximized your XP gain from training, from high command members, from Chief of the Army, Air Force, or Navy, and you've got the officer corps that boost it as well, you're gaining the max amount of XP before you actually go to war. Now, as a luxury, if you're a communist nation or a fascist nation, you can send divisions to the Spanish Civil War to grind more air XP, and the more of those modifiers you do stack, the more XP you will actually gain. At this point, if you've stacked all your modifiers, where do you spend your army XP next? You want to make your key divisions. And give example, make a 7-2. Wait for the XP to gain, 10 XP, boom, we got a 7-2 division there. It's not as universally as meta as it used to be, the 7-2, but trust me, it still works. It still works. If you want a division to base everything off, if you're really new to the game, you want to start with the 7-2 and then build off from there. And then you can also work on a more ideal tank template. You can go for something like a 30 width if you want to. You get 2 choices really. You could work on a smaller template and then slowly build it up over time. That's usually quite effective. You could go for something like a 30 width that's kind of a little bit more economical, or if you want to go super meta, you want to go for a 42 width or a 44 width, which is more combat width optimized. And this total cost of this is 115 XP. Wow, it's totally wrong actually. You don't need about 50 or 60. You need probably about 150. Wow, I never even realized that. Quite typical to have engineers on. I'm not a big fan of engineers, but do what's best for you. Logistics is going to be one. Support artillery, support anti-air is another one too. So you're looking for an average cost for a fully 44 width infantry division. You're going to need about 150 XP, if not 160 XP as well, if you want to make something that's super meta. Hence the reason why you want to bank as much land XP as possible before the war happens to have a really ideal template. Once again, make it to how you want to make it. If you're going to go for 40 width, logistics is necessary as well. But overall, everything else is optional depending where they're going to be fighting in the world and what you're going to be using it for. And then finally, 1, you've stacked as many bonuses you have for your officer corps to gain you the max amount of XP. 2, you're participating in wars that you actively can be involved in this case, the fascists or communists in Spain, or the Democrats, you're just not doing anything. And then 3rd, you've made your ideal division template, the one you're actually going to use in the war that's the most optimal. How do you know the meta of war before wars even happen? Thinking face. And thirdly, finally, then at this point, you can actually start working on doctrines. And my advice to you is getting through those doctrines as quickly as possible is so worth it. And there's so many bonuses you can gain to reduce the cost of your doctrines. I mean, one of them is a no-brainer. You can get them through focus trees, which will make research of these doctrines cheaper. In this case, let's say an example here. Can you see this one? Cost of reduction of land doctrine, 50% times 2. So basically, instead of costing 100 XP to go for your next doctrine, it will cost you 50 XP, which severely reduces the cost of that. So what I would usually do is get your ideal officer corps, get your ideal division templates, and then when you're about to go to war, let's go with you playing historical. So it'll be September 1939. You'll have all your XP banked, as long as it's not more than 500 XP. You want to spend it if you get to 500 XP, because there's no point banking it, because you'll lose XP in that case. And then you spend it all when you've got the cheaper officer corps doc discounts for your focus tree. Then you've also got your theorists. In this case, we'll go for grand battle plan, and we can also go for the professional officer corps, which makes it 5% cheaper as well. So overall, then the cost for the next doctrine, it'll be 80 cost with stacking all those modifiers. Boom, 80 costs, 80 80. Therefore, you can rush through your doctrine significantly quicker. To be fair, if you're in 1939 and you've done everything you wanted to do, there's not really much point staying on relief of command. You're better off going for some of these other bonuses that will actively give you bonuses actually during combat. There's no such thing as the most optimal template anymore. 100% agree. 100%. I think using the word best and favorite is the worst thing you can do in Hoi 4. You have to say to yourself, you have to make a template that's most optimal for what you're going to be doing. So for instance, if you're fighting in Africa, for instance, logistics is going to be worth it because your supply is a nightmare. Also, having a maintenance company is worth it because you're going to be in desert tile, which experience extra attrition, keeping your reliability high, therefore experiencing less attrition. Once again, you make your division where it's going to be fighting and what it's going to be specifically doing. Also, another good idea is when you're using tanks in North Africa, it might be a good idea to have fuel drums on them as well because it gives you extra supply of fuel. So therefore, you can push further into Africa without having to deal with the actual bad supply, because the difference between Tripoli and Benghazi is massive, and they're the only two supply depots in North Africa, and it's really far to get from there. And the only way you could do that is by keeping that supply low, by reducing it with logistics companies, and also keeping the attrition with supply companies, with logistics companies, and also with fuel drums, and then also keeping the attrition low with maintenance companies as well. Once again, you make the division to where it's going to be fighting, and it might be better if you were to do a naval invasion of Sicily to maybe go for an infantry invasion of this location, because landing with tanks is going to be difficult due to the mountains and the mountainous terrain of Italy. But then, for instance, if you're going to do a naval invasion here, for instance, you could do it with tanks because it's mostly plains here. Just once again, you make the division for where it's going to be fighting most optimally. And also engineers would be really useful here for a naval invasion too. If you don't have a specific marine template, you can use engineers, which gives you a big attack bonus for doing a naval invasion, which is quite effective for infantry. Not so much for tanks though, because tanks have got such a big penalty for doing amphibious invasions. I wouldn't recommend it unless it's an amphibious tank. So it's always worthwhile to do it in that set order, because therefore you have the most optimized division templates. Therefore you'll do the most damage in battle. You'll also have the most XP, which allows you to get some more doctrines, where doctrines give you attack bonuses and organization bonuses, which is useful because your divisions will fight most optimally in battle. And then at that point, there's not really much point. You're going to be sat on 500 XP for everything if you max your doctrines out. There's not really anything to spend your XP on late game. Sometimes there's situations late game where you feel like you're just sitting on command power and not doing anything with it. And then sometimes command power is like you desperately need it because you need to spend it for your high command and whatnot. I think it costs too much command XP to find a general as well. 100 command power is so expensive. Another thing as well, like say if you could send volunteers to the Spanish Civil War, you gain a ridiculous amount of air XP from that. You can max out the entirety of your air doctrine just from sending 2 or 3 air wings to the Spanish Civil War, or even the China-Japanese War as well. You see that quite often in my games. I'll boost relations with China, I'll send volunteers, and I'll just sit here in northern China bombing Japan, and that'll gain me enough air XP for the entire game, which is mad strong too. There's that one too, air crew surveys. It reduces the air doctrine cost by 15%. That's just absolutely huge. It's mad strong. It's another way of sitting on more of your XP and spending it more efficiently. Yeah, someone in my chat just said that if you exercise your fleet and you've got no fuel, you still will gain a weird trickle of XP, which is really weird if you think about it. I suppose this is like expert survivability skills. This being able to operate your ship without any fuel. Be aware as well, you gain big chunks of army XP from certain focuses too. It's case like 10 XP here. There's none there. Army innovation gives you 20 XP, air XP as well. So just be aware there are some focuses that will give you a bit of XP, especially if you desperately need it early game as well. Some of the Together for Victory focus trees have got huge amounts of XP early on. Canada, your very first focus, gains you 50 XP. And that's amazing because it lets you get the Democratic Spirit of the Army. And then you can get your Chief of the Army half price as well. Damn, what a bargain. He goes to Rhineland. And most people, when we get Rhineland, they would hire their first advisor. And you would usually go for a silent workhorse or Rudolf Hess, for instance. But I think in all fairness, the meta now is to go for your army officer. Just going to give you division attack and gives you ticking XP. So from the get-go, for the very, very beginning of the game now, which allows you to make your most ideal division template and also gain a few extra doctrines at the very start of the game as well, which is super worth it. So the no-brainer for Germany would be to go for professional officer course to begin with, which will reduce your cost for your doctrines, which you're always going to do anyway. But to top it off as well, you're gaining army XP gain plus 5%. Here's an example. I'm exercising my entirety of my air force here, and I'm gaining 0.02 XP daily. That's why you never want to exercise your air force. It's just not a really good way of getting XP. Same as Germany, you never really want to exercise your navy. I mean, it's useful if you're going to specifically for a XP, specifically for a naval Germany, which is kind of a build people do as a wonky meme, I guess. Just not really effective thing to do for Germany because you just don't have enough fuel to actually do it. There you go, Spanish Civil War here. This is going to gain you a little bit of air XP. And to top it off, it'll gain you a little bit of land XP. for engaging in combat. But the main thing you're sending this for is to gain air experience. And look at this. Look how much air XP I am gaining daily just from bombing northern Iberia. It's absolutely insane. Once again, it's one of those things I feel like they need to be nerfed because you just gain so much XP from this. And to top that off as well, why not use your dude to grind a little bit of XP? So this is the benefit, the extra added benefit you get as a fascist or a communist nation to gain a little bit of XP early game. To be fair, this is your playground to learn how to do your blitzkrieg. Boom, like this video. Boom, like this video. What is this? Subliminal messaging? No way. At the same time, if you want to focus on Navy, something I wouldn't recommend, but you have the option to do it, you gain a bit more XP from that, Chief of the Navy, and the Chief of the Air Force too to gain a bit of XP as well. Once again, I think the air reform is probably the better option here. Anyway, there you go. Spanish Civil War is now over. And to give you a bit of an example, just from exercising my fleet just a wee bit, using my Air Force, gain 400 XP, which is absolutely insane if you think about it. Then I have the option to send volunteers as well. But overall, 250 XP minus the professional officer corps, 150 XP minus the naval reform, practically 500 air XP if you deduct the Air Force commands. So overall, you can gain potentially a lot of XP as the fascists. You can max out your Air Force and potentially land XP before 1939, which is pretty bonkers if you think about it. Any comments about land XP? I understand this was a bit of an introduction video. It's not really for you if you're a big multiplayer meta bio. But a lot of people ask me this question, so I thought it'd be a nice thing to answer. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like candy. Do you like candy? Huh? And if you want to watch another video from my channel, I really would appreciate it. And this will be the next one. Give it a try. You might like it.